Do I look clearer? Do I sound clearer? I should fucking hope so, because I got a new phone, okay? And it costs money. We are going to be talking about things I want to see in future Hunger Games books. POVs I want to see, features of people I want to see, things I want to learn about, things I don't want to learn about. We're going to go through it all. I feel like Sunrise on the Reaping answered so many questions I didn't even know I had, and yet at the same time, like, it just gave me more questions. Like, when I finished the original trilogy, I just felt complete. Like, all of the characters we met, all Effie and Beatty and Wyrus and Mags, I was just like, you know what, we don't know much about them, but I don't need to, you know, their story feels complete. I'm not gonna wonder that much more about them. Did I wonder more about them? Yes, but I was okay with not knowing. After Sunrise on the Reaping, I'm not okay with not knowing anymore, and I'm gonna need a little more. If I had made this before Sunrise on the Reaping, there'd be two people at the top of this list: Hamish Abernathy and Plutarch Heavensby. Imagine my motherfucking delight. Imagine my motherfucking delight when I opened this book and it was about both of them. Oh, I'm tearing up. It's like it was literally made for me. It truly was. There aren't, to be honest, that many characters that I'm like, I need to see this person's perspective, because the two I wanted the most, I feel fulfilled. I feel very fulfilled. That being said, I want more of Plutarch. And I think if we get books set between the 50th and 75th, there's a very good chance that we continue to see Plutarch. I don't think he'll probably ever be featured in as big a role again, though I would love him to. I can see a world where it's another tributes book who joins the rebellion later on, and maybe they've not been working with Plutarch in the way that Hamish was, but Plutarch kind of approaches them in like an end chapter or an epilogue even, after seeing their growing resentment of the capital and their willingness to kind of lash out. You know, I could really see that for the next two people on my list. So that kind of brings me into the first person that I think we should see a full book from their perspective, and that is Miss Johanna Mason. Now, hot take, I don't love Johanna. I don't love her. I don't hate her. I don't dislike her. I just don't feel really any type of way about her. In my head, the people who love Johanna are similar to Marauders fans in the sense that they love the idea of her that they've made up in their head, but like there's not that much substance on the page to really be like, she's my favorite character.
You love the idea of me. You love being seen with me, but you don't love me.
That being said, you Foxface fans, I know you're out there. The bitch doesn't speak. The bitch doesn't have a name. All of that coming from someone who was a Clove girl. A Clove girl. A Clove. We know nothing about her. So like I'm not judging. I'm just saying, okay? I love Maisley because I feel like she was what everyone thinks Johanna is. Is that harsh? What I'm most interested in is the fact that Johanna's whole family is dead. Sound like someone we know? We essentially know that Johanna's family was killed by the Capitol for something that she did. We also know from her characterization that she's incredibly outspoken. She's not afraid to stand up to the Capitol whatsoever. What did she do? What did she do to get targeted by the Capitol like that? And I think that also implies, it was, you know, pretty heavily implied in Sunrise on the Reaping that Katniss, Peeta, Mags, Wyrus, Beatty all were rigged to be put into the 75th Hunger Games. I think Johanna's whole family being dead and her getting into those games also feels like she was probably rigged to be in there, because the Capitol they don't have a way to quietly kill victors. They're famous celebrities. This is the perfect way. The next person, I think we all can guess, the next person that we need a perspective book from, the one that I want the most, Finnick. I need this book. Sorry, I need this book. And I feel like, maybe this is just wishful thinking, but I really feel like this could be a top contender for the next book. If there is going to be a next book, I don't know. Both the original trilogy and Sunrise on the Reaping, after those, I really didn't expect to get a next book. I was just sort of like, okay, the original trilogy, like, it's a trilogy. It's wrapped up. And then we were surprised with Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Did I say Sunrise on the Reaping earlier? I meant Ballad. And then after Ballad, I was like, okay, like it still feels like sort of a one-off wrapped up story, just showing like, ooh, there's a deeper connection between Snow and Katniss, and like here's the rise of I feel like a lot of authors will just sort of write like a villain origin story, but that doesn't mean they're making it into a series. And then Sunrise on the Reaping came out. And after reading Sunrise on the Reaping, I didn't feel the same sense of like, okay, well, that concludes the story. That concludes the story. As I said in the start, it left me with more questions than I started with. I really, really feel like Suzanne is going to write more. And not to get political on the channel, I actually don't give a fuck about being political on my channel. With the current political climate for the next 4 years, I think Suzanne is going to find a lot of material to write about. I think she's going to have a lot of inspiration. So yeah, I think there's a very big likelihood that we get another book, and we get it sooner rather than later, like within the next 2 to 4 years. I wouldn't be surprised if we got an announcement. I'm not saying we get another book within 2 to 4 years, but I wouldn't be surprised about another announcement. This goes along with something I just really, really want, is a career perspective. And I think Finnick would be a perfect career perspective, because I think a lot of people have this idea of Finnick because of how we know him in the original trilogy. But as he was described to us, like before Katniss really got to know Finnick, he was kind of the perfect golden boy, career trained, handsome, strong,
talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular.
Everyone loved him. Like, he really was a golden boy. And I would love to see the career perspective. And I think this POV would also really shake people, because I saw this question on Reddit like, I don't know, months if not years ago, that was like, why do people not consider District 4 career? And the obvious answer is that the movies didn't show District 4 as being career, and so a lot of people just sort of forget that District 4 is career if they aren't rereading the books. But I also think it's because of the 75th Hunger Games and because of Finnick, Annie, and Mags. I think the fact that District 4 didn't ally with the other careers in the 75th Hunger Games makes people forget that they even were careers, because also District 4 does not play a very large role in the 74th Hunger Games either. They get killed really early on, so they just play pretty much no role in the 74th Hunger Games. It's all 1 and 2. So then when 75 comes around and 4's not with 1 and 2, it's super easy to forget that. And I think the third factor is that people kind of fall into Katniss's perspective. Katniss's perspective is very much like the careers are one of the enemy. And I just reread The Hunger Games. There's literally a line where she's like, full on says like, they are my enemies, they're the bad guys. And this was, I think it was before they even went into the arena. I think it was during training. So it was very, like, Katniss does not remember who the enemy is in the 74th games, and often forgets it in the 75th games and beyond. And yes, there is precedent for that. There is the fact that they are wealthier, they live a better life, they train to be in the Hunger Games, they get handouts from the Capitol a lot more than the other districts. So all of that is to say that I feel like the audience, we have this idea of what career is, but then we also fall in love with Finnick and Mags and Annie. And instead of taking the lesson to remember who the enemy is and join those two schemas together, we just separate them. We take District 4 out of the career schema, and we forget that they're even in there. We don't consider them career, or if we do remember their career, it's like, oh, but they're not like the other careers. They're not like 1 and 2. But that's not the case. District 4 is a career district through and through. And I want to see that. I want to see Finnick as a full-on fucking career. I want to see him in a Cato light. And I want to see what that does to the fucking fandom. And this once again goes back to the Cato movie line that I talked about in the last video. Again, this is movie canon, but the kill me, like, I'm dead anyways, I always was, right?
Dead anyway. I always was, right? I didn't know that till now.
I am probably going to make a video on that line, but it just goes back to that line. That's all I'm saying. I also think this book would have much more happening after the games. Like, I think it wouldn't be as games heavy as Sunrise on the Reaping and the Hunger Games is. I think the games would be maybe like kind of more like the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Like, it would happen towards the start, and then the other half of the book, or third of the book, whatever, is dedicated to after the games, because I don't think that Finnick did anything rebellious in the games. I don't think that Finnick was on the rebellion's radar at the time. Again, I think he was this golden boy career. I think he was very much Cato, where he believed that winning would bring glory and he would really feel like a victor and he would get riches and fame and adoration. And that's not the reality of what happened. He then goes through the games. He experiences all this fucking trauma. He's then forced to mentor child after child. He's forced into prostitution. And this adoration and fame, I think a lot of real life celebrities go through this. It's not what you actually expect. You think you want it, you think it would feel good, and it's not. It's objectifying and it's degrading. And so I think Finnick's part in the rebellion comes a while after he finishes his games, once the resentment has started to build up. There's also part of this perspective that I haven't talked about yet that I'm gonna get into later, so just hold on. The last one that I said I really want like a full-on perspective book from was a mentor. I just put it as a mentor because I don't know who I would want it to be. I don't know who it could be. But as I was rereading The Hunger Games, I found myself so curious about what Haymitch's perspective on it would be. And to be clear, I don't want like a Haymitch's perspective of Katniss's Games book. But I was wondering about the logistics, about what is Haymitch seeing on his end? Especially this also combines with all of what we get about cutting and editing and changing how the viewers see the games that we got from Sunrise on the Reaping. Are mentors seeing what citizens are seeing, or can they like see a full overview? Do they have eyes on their tribute at all times, regardless of whether the Capitol is airing it or not? Also, early on in the book, Haymitch refrains from sending Katniss water because he knows that she's near a water source, and there's that whole thing where she's like, the only reason he's not doing this is because I'm close. How did he know that? That it could be that as they were airing the games, I can imagine them, Lucky and Caesar just being like, oh, it's such a pity, she's just feet from the river, something like that, you know, whatever. But could it also be that the mentors can see the full arena map and they can see the trackers of where all the tributes are? Do they have a camera? Like anytime their tribute is in view of a camera, do they have the ability to see it? Do they have the ability to see other tributes? Like, I want to know these little logistical behind the scenes things. But also more than that, like, again, reading Sunrise on the Reaping really made me think about the emotions of a mentor. Like, definitely the original trilogy makes you think about that. And Katniss even grapples with the fact of like, how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to be the one mentor for girls year after year after year? And they also wonder like, no wonder Haymitch has a drinking problem. He's the only mentor year after year after year, watching these children die who have no fucking chance because it's District 12. That's already emotional on its own. But Sunrise on the Reaping really made me realize how hard Haymitch has it as a mentor, especially when it comes to Katniss and Peeta. Number one, the fact that Burdock was his friend as a child, and Katniss is so similar to Burdock, and Katniss is so similar to Haymitch. And now he has to watch her, he assumes, die, because everyone does. It recontextualizes the 75th Hunger Games and how many of his friends and the people who looked out for him and who he looked out for were going into those games to die. It's really no wonder, you know what, I'll get into that later. But it's really no wonder that like the rebellion, the plan to break the machine finally happened fully and for sure in the 75th Hunger Games, because like there was no time more motivated than this, because it's not even just Haymitch who's going through that. There's so many other victors out there who probably got really close to these people, who mentored these people, who were mentored by these people, who are experiencing the same exact ordeal. So I think it's really no wonder that the 75th Hunger Games were the ones that finally just broke it. And I could really, really see a book where it's a Finnick perspective, but it's not Finnick's games, it's Annie's. And I think the fandom would implode, because there would just be so much infighting between the people who are just excited to get a Finnick book and the people who are upset that it's not Finnick's games. But I think that could be a really good book, and I think that's something I could see Suzanne doing. I mean, personally, I'd prefer the Finnick Games book with the whole career thing that I was talking about earlier, but I could see a world where she does a Finnick mentor book instead. Now, getting into the next section, we have features I want to see. People that I don't want necessarily a book from their perspective. I guess I wouldn't be upset if I got one, but more just I want to know more about them. But I don't necessarily think I want to know more about them taking up 300 pages, you know? First we have Effie, which I know we just got a bunch of Effie in Sunrise on the Reaping, but I want to know more about Effie. In my last video, I kind of wondered, like, why is Effie still in District 12? After I said 15 years, 25. Okay, guys, I know. 25, I get it. After 25 years, why the fuck is Effie still in District 12? Because I think the implication is that she becomes a escort. I think that's what they're called. Presumably, Effie became the District 12 escort following Sunrise on the Reaping, or at least closely following Sunrise on the Reaping. I would assume they fired Drusilla after Haymitch's games, and Effie got the position pretty immediately. But it's been 25 years. And I theorized in the last video, Effie was probably in her early to mid-20s, somewhere in her 20s. 25 years, that means she's in her 40s to 50s at this point. I theorized that she's being punished for her involvement in Haymitch's games, that it doesn't really matter that she wasn't really involved. The fact that she helped to make Haymitch a victor and to make him look good and to make people love him, she's being punished for it all these years later. 25 years in District 12 is a long fucking time, man. The next one is, I think, the one that the most people want to know more about as a feature character or a main character. You know, I think most people want Finnick's book, but I think most people want to know more about this character. You can probably guess it's Tigris. And this is what I was saying about Finnick's storyline earlier. Wait for me to get to this section, then this will kind of finish out my whole pitch for Finnick's book. I think that Tigris was Finnick's stylist. I think that makes perfect sense. I think Tigris would have been given a very good district to work with because she has the nepotism. She's also, as we know, Finnick's like the 65th Hunger Games or 57th, something in there, in between Haymitch and Katniss. So she has been working for decades and decades at this point. Again, she has that nepotism. I'm sure she would be working for a career district. So I think it makes perfect sense that Tigris would be Finnick's stylist. And I think a lot of people think this, that Tigris likely joined the rebellion because of Snow's prostitution of victors. I think there was a lot more to it, obviously, but I think the prostitution was likely the straw that broke the camel's back. And as we know, Finnick has a prostitution storyline following his games. I think it makes perfect sense that Finnick and Tigris, one or the other, kind of brings each other into the rebellion or kind of hypes each other up in a way of like, this is wrong, and resentment and turning against Snow in the Capitol, because they're both in these positions where they feel grateful for the Capitol, where they feel that the Capitol serves them and that they're profiting off the Capitol. So they're both in positions where it would be hard to pull away from that unless there's something really horrific and big like this that they've both gone through. Obviously, Tigris was not pimped out in the same way that Finnick was. You know, Snow, as of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, never wanted that for his sister or for his cousin. But we also know it's implied, she likely had sold her body at that point to keep the family alive. And so I think seeing her cousin then pimp out victors after having gone through, we know that that's a very traumatic experience for the women and girls who did have to sell their body in order to feed their family or hold on to their house during the war and following the war. So she would never be okay with that. I think that would really cement her as seeing Snow as evil. And I think a lot of people might argue that 65 or however many years would be too long for Tigris to not see what Snow has become. And I think that might be valid. There's a chance that she's been growing resentment for a very long time, and that what happens with Finnick is simply what pulls her into the actual rebellion, like the kind of organization that it is. And by organization, I mean, you know, Plutarch communicating with people and pulling people into this plan. But I also think it's important to remember Snow was Tigris's best friend, one of her only family members. She grew up with him from the moment he was born. That would be incredibly, and also, because we We don't read it from first person perspective in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but we get a lot of Snow's inner monologue. And so we understand how evil he is and how calculating and how we get his motivations and what he's actually wanting. But if you just look on the face value of what he's saying to other people and the way he's presenting himself to other people, he's a very charming person. And it's very believable to me that Tigris genuinely doesn't know that Snow is such like a cold-hearted person. There are so many times in the ballad where she's just so complimentary of him, saying like, you're such a good person, you have such a good heart, like you're so selfless, all this stuff. I think she genuinely believes that about him because he's so manipulative and so charming and so good at it. So I think it would take a very long time for her to, number one, start to really be like, he's not who I thought he was and I need to accept that. And number two, fully join a force that goes against him. I think it's one thing to kind of separate yourself from him and be like, he's a different person, he's not who I thought he was, he's not who he was, is likely what she would think. He's not who he was, even though he's never been what she thought he was. It's another thing to then be sheltering fugitives on their way to go kill your cousin. I think there's a leap there, and I think that leap may very well have to do with Finnick. If it's Finnick or not, regardless, I want to know more about Tigris, and I think everyone does. Then I put Chaff, just because we don't know anything about him. We get to know Chaff as like a drinking buddy of Haymitch, and that very well may be all he is they get together and drink away their sorrows as they're mentoring these kids who die. Because I think Chaff is 11, so he's also like rarely ever getting a victor out of the games. That may be all he is. But again, going back to this implication that we've now been kind of gathering of like, okay, Katniss, Peeta, Wyrus, Beetee, Mags, likely Johanna, were all rigged to be in the 75th Hunger Games. Was Chaff? Who else was? I don't believe every single one of the victors in there were rigged to be in there, but I think there were definitely a good handful of people who were rigged to be in there, and I think the people who are allied with the rebellion, I think that's generally going to be a good indicator of who was sent into the 75th Hunger Games as punishment. So Chaff might have had something to do with the rebellion a little bit. He might have also just trusted his friend Haymitch, and when his friend said like, hey, you need to ally with my district and, you know, Four and all these other people, it's a big allyship, it's your only saving grace, he might have just trusted his friend and taken it, and there's nothing more to it. I don't know. And then I have just a couple general things I want to know more about. It's not people, it's not really fleshed out ideas, but just stuff that I have more questions on. The first one is the rise of technology. I was really surprised in Haymitch in Sunrise on the Reaping, that's only 25 years before, or actually 24 years before Katniss's. And technology has come so far in that span of time, but at the same time, not. Like, I think it's hard when the only perspectives you're getting is district citizens, because on the one hand, I think there was a lot of similar technology from Haymitch's year to Katniss's year in the way he describes the arena and their ability to manipulate the arena and the mutts and stuff like that. It all sounds very similar on the Capitol's end, but the treatment of the tributes is very different. And that leads into my next point. It's kind of one point. Technology difference and the treatment of tributes. Why is it? I totally understand why in the 10th Hunger Games they're being loaded onto cattle cars and put in a zoo. Like, that all makes sense to me. They're in like just a gladiator style old crumbling arena. That all makes sense to me. It's the 10th Hunger Games. But why in 50 years Haymitch's treatment isn't particularly good? The trains aren't particularly nice. The training center, and I think it's like the cafeteria, the training center where they do the tribute scoring, all of that is just like one big gymnasium room that they just kind of convert in between activities, you know? The places that they're staying are not particularly nice. But when we get to Katniss's year, it's crazy nice. They're going on these like high-speed bullet trains and showers with all these scents and extravagant dishes that come at a press of a button. So clothes, and they have these penthouse apartments, and there's these really nice training centers, and everything has a dedicated space. So what was the reason for this massive, in 25 years, massive difference between the treatment of tributes? Meanwhile, in the 50, or I guess 40 years before that, there had been very little change. There had been a lot of change to the technology of the arena. There had been very little change in the care given to tributes and the resources put forth for training and for everything on the tribute end. What caused that change? And again, I think if we get a Johanna or a Finnick book, we could get some answers for that middle period. But yeah, I think the whole technology and just seeing the way that the capital changes with each, and the districts and the treatment of everything with each iteration of the series, like I love it. The last thing I want to know more about is the 25th Hunger Games. That Quarter Quell has always been very, very interesting to me because it gives power to the districts in a way that I don't think is good for the capital. I would not, if I was a part of the capital political association or whatever, I would not be advising that Quarter Quell to happen because, like, number one, it gives agency to districts. It shows districts what it's like to have agency. It gives districts an example of democracy, which when you're trying to lead a totalitarian government, it's not generally advisable to be like, here's a taste of what democracy looks like. Obviously, the democracy in this case is awful because you're voting for people to go die, but it's still showing people like, here's a different option for how things can be run and how the people at the bottom can actually have a say. Oh yeah, I also think it has the chance to backfire in their faces. I think if I lived in District 12, I was working my ass off in the mines. I was starving. My children were starving. And I was told, vote for who you think should go into the Hunger Games. I would turn to a girl like Maisley Donner and I would go, you, go on. Or I forget her name, but like the mayor's daughter in the ballad. Oh, go on in. Yeah, like, I just think that's how it would work in a lot of districts where they would just be voting like, oh, you want us to vote? You want us to kill our fellow citizens? We're going to kill the closest to you that we can. We're going to kill the richest one. We're going to kill the one who flounces around in their beautiful dresses and eats as many candies as they want and complains about beautiful gold pins. That's what we'll do. So I think it gives a dangerous amount of power to the citizens. It also forces a level of attention and accountability that I think breeds resentment and rebellion. I think, how do I say this? Like, we know, I'm not sure about Haymitch's games, but we know as of Katniss's games that viewing is essentially required. Obviously, you know, you're still going about doing your job and classes and school and stuff. You don't have to have your eyes glued to the TV, but it needs to be on. You're walking down the street, it's turned on. You go home, it's turned on. The games are on in households. But you don't have to watch them. And I think a lot of people, when Reaping Day comes around, it really only super directly affects a handful of families. It affects their families, it affects their friends, it affects like teachers maybe and stuff like that, people who really knew you in the community. But for the most part, all the other families are just sitting there going, oh my God, thank God it wasn't me, thank God it wasn't my son, my brother, whatever. And relief and gratitude go hand in hand. And so I think that kind of model of the Hunger Games balances things out where you have only a couple families who are really super angry to do something. And when you only have a couple, you can't do anything. Meanwhile, when you make people vote on who's going to go into the games, now they can't not pay attention. Because now when that child dies, they feel as though they have killed them. If that child is a victor, I don't even know what that would feel like. But point is, there is a level of accountability that now is pressing onto the entire district that's going to bring resentment, that's going to make everyone feel like, hey, maybe we can act up because we're all angry right now. I also think in terms of the tribute side, again, just there would be so much anger towards the capital, towards your own district. I just feel like it's a breeding ground for tributes to act out. I just feel like the 25th Hunger Games, the Quarter Quell was such a terrible idea. Every Quarter Quell has been a bit of a failure, if I do say so myself. So I would love to see more about that. Ooh, this is a long video. Lastly, I just have a quick section. We're going to do this quickly. Things I don't want to know more about. Number one, Lucy Gray. I never want to hear another word about her. She leaves a mystery, and that's exactly how it should be. I don't want to know another thing about her. Cinna. This might be a controversial one, and like internally I really want to know more about Cinna, but I'm also very okay with him just remaining as a mysterious figure. I don't know, I just feel like maybe we aren't made to get to know more about Cinna, and I also don't see a point where like Cinna could be introduced, because I don't want anything more from like Katniss's games or whatever. I don't want any more of like what we've already gotten, and we know that the 74th Hunger Games is Cinna's first games as a stylist, so like obviously I do think there's probably interactions that could happen before the 74th Hunger Games, but I just don't see where he could fit in, and I don't really know if it would serve his character to learn more about him, so I'm just putting him here. And that kind of goes on to the point. Anything from the Mockingjay, Sunrise on the Reaping epilogue on, really anything from the 74th Hunger Games on, I don't want to learn anything more about, but especially the epilogue and everything past that. Leave it alone. Leave them alone. Let them live in a beautiful meadow in my mind, just happily lounging in the sun with beautiful little golden haired children, or I don't remember the color of their children's hair. Let them live in my mind. Okay, let it go. And I really don't think Suzanne ever would give us more about Lucy or anything past the epilogue, but I just definitely don't want that. I hope this video was okay. It's super long and I feel like I just rambled a lot. Also, I don't want my channel to just become about the Hunger Games. I love the Hunger Games and I have so many ideas of videos I want to make about the Hunger Games, but maybe I'll try and like intersperse them here and there, just because I do like, if I keep up with posting on this channel, it's not a Hunger Games channel, it's a channel about like books in general, so I just don't want to box myself in. So if you subscribe and see videos about other books, don't be shocked. Oh yeah, also thanks for the views on my video, thanks for the subscribers. Subscribe. Sorry, it feels really disingenuous to say that stuff, not because I'm like it was exciting, it was cool to see, you know, that many views and to see new subscribers, don't get me wrong, but it's just like, it's just so like, I'm not a YouTuber, so saying stuff like subscribe, thanks for the subscribers, it's just like, okay, bye.